Great way to start the second hour of the programme. Take Me Out with Franz Ferdinand. Just coming up to 1:10. It's Matthew Bannister sitting in for Jeremy Vine this lunchtime on Radio 2. And the Chancellor, Alistair Darling, has refused to rule out the possibility of a holiday on stamp duty to kickstart the economy. Currently, people buying properties for between £125,000 and £250,000 pay 1% in stamp duty at the time of sale. Those spending more than £250,000 pay 3%, while homes worth more than £500,000 incur a 4% rate. There are concerns in some quarters that this is putting people off buying houses and also making it even more difficult for first-time buyers to get on the ladder. So, should we have a stamp duty holiday to reinvigorate the property market? To discuss this, I'm delighted to say we're joined by Gordon Brown of Gordon Brown Associates, a firm of solicitors and estate agents in Chester Street. Hello, Gordon.
Hi, Matthew.
What do you think? Do you think a stamp duty holiday would be a good idea?
Well, it's a question of whether you think the housing market is deserving of some help, but it certainly wouldn't harm.
Right. What effect would it have?
Well, it'll make it slightly more affordable for people to get into the market and to move up the market where they need to. For example, if they've had an additional child, need a bigger house, that kind of thing.
I've seen all sorts of options canvassed here. One of them would be that it would only apply to the lower-priced properties. Would that be a good idea?
Well, the problem that we have in the market at the moment is making chains and getting them through to completion. We're getting a lot of sales that fall through because it's just taking so long for the sales down the chain to be made up. I think it would help further up because the problem we have at the moment is affordability. If there was more credit in the market, then we wouldn't be seeing quite the level of price drops that we're having. It was always going to come, and we're having to deal with it, and to have one or two things happen, or to be made to happen, would assist the market, not just the people working in it, but the people who enjoy the benefit of housing, moving house, improving themselves.
Isn't the problem at the moment that every time you open a newspaper, you read an article that says house prices are going to fall further, and so anybody who's thinking about buying is saying, well, I'll hang on till next year. Well,
that's right. It's the same everywhere, and the commodities are now cooling. You've got to decide when you're going to get into the market. I think that probably we've got a little way still to go, but who knows?
But would the stamp duty change, however it comes, make any difference to that kind of emotional feeling?
The thing which is going to help is when mortgage deals become more attractive, but they are starting to be, although you wouldn't see that in the headlines. If you read down the articles, you're starting to see comments that mortgage crisis end in sight, ? Well, if you're looking now, I mean, I'm looking to remortgage myself at the moment. If I'd done that 6 weeks ago and looked for a fixed rate or a tracker, the interest rate would have probably started with a 7, while I've got 5.74.
So you think things are starting to gradually get better in the mortgage market?
Yeah, that's what will stop the price drops, stabilise the market, and eventually, of course, because everything goes in cycles, prices will start to rise again, but hopefully not like they did over the last 3 years.
Another option that I've read about is that people maybe wouldn't have to pay the stamp duty for several years, but they would eventually have to pay it. Do you think that would be helpful enough?
Well, I haven't heard several years, because, to be honest, I don't exactly know what's being put forward, because
well, I don't think anybody does,
different things.
At the moment there are just a number of different leaks in the newspapers, aren't there? And the Chancellor didn't rule it out yesterday, so everybody's obviously speculating about it. But I was just trying to go through the different options with you. I mean, what if, for example, you didn't have to pay the stamp duty till you sold the house?
Well, that might be beneficial. I mean, the best thing, of course, is you don't have to pay it at all. I think a scheme which was put to me yesterday where the obligation to pay the stamp duty was deferred by 6 months, I don't think that will make any difference to the markets, you know.
Because, I mean, some people have suggested, some commentators have said that actually this happened when the Conservatives were in power in 1991, and it had no effect whatsoever on the housing market.
Well, of course, they wouldn't be able to judge. I was working in the housing market at that time, and it was not as bad as it is now. And my perception of it was that it helped. Okay. It was part, it was when things were starting to recover. It was just part of the general recovery of the market. And as I've said before, it won't harm.
OK, I want to bring in another guest, Jonathan Davis, Chartered Financial Planner from Armstrong Davis Limited and a spokesman for housepricecrash.co.uk, a website. Hello, Jonathan.
Good afternoon.
Do you think the idea of a stamp duty holiday is a good one?
I think it's absolutely dreadful. It will suck unsuspecting people into the market, which is falling rapidly, and it will continue to fall for the next couple of years.
So as far as you're concerned, the government shouldn't do anything to try to help the housing market?
I see no reason why the government shouldn't help the housing market.
Well, wouldn't the stamp duty holiday do that?
Sorry?
Sorry, Jonathan, but wouldn't the stamp duty holiday begin to start to help it recover?
No, all it would do is give a temporary reprieve, and it would certainly help lots of estate agents, but it wouldn't help unsuspecting buyers buying vastly overpriced so-called assets.
And what about the idea of being allowed to defer paying stamp duty?
Well, again, how does that help? How does it help to save, perhaps, say, 1 or 3% of the purchase price, but lose 20% of the capital value in a falling market? How does that possibly help? It doesn't.
So, Gordon Brown, you've got a vested interest in this happening. That's what Jonathan Davis is accusing you of. Is that fair? Hey there, Gordon. Oh, we seem to have lost Gordon Brown. Not to worry. So, what about Jonathan? What if they just dealt with the lowest level of transaction in stamp duty? Would that not help the first-time buyer?
Well, again, of course, it saves them perhaps 1%, say £1,500, for example. But £150,000 property, in our view at Armstrong Davis, is going below £100,000. So how does it help you to save £1,500 but lose £50,000? And that's what our forecast is for the next 2 or 3 years.
So, Gordon Brown, just if we can hear you now, your reaction to the accusation that you've got a bit of a vested interest.
Well, I have two vested interests. First of all, I earn my living from the market, but secondly, I'm a member of the British Society, and I have property interests as well. And I think that this price correction which is going on is not a bad thing. So please don't get me wrong. I don't want prices to shoot away again, but it's the property market is a driver of the economy, and I don't see why it's in the interests of society in this country to have a collapsing property market.
But we touched on this point earlier, and Jonathan raised it again, that everybody seems to be predicting that prices are going to continue going down. So he's saying it's a really bad time to enter the market, and giving a stamp duty holiday would just tempt people in. It'd
be interesting then if Jonathan could tell me when the market is going to bottom out and to what levels the prices will rebound.
Go on then, Jonathan.
Well, if you look at the last crash, which was roughly from 89 to 94 or 96, according to what part of the country you were in, and prices on average fell about 15% that time. This time the crash started in October last year or so, so 2007 to around 2011 is our best forecast for the UK market. Prices, we believe, will fall around 35% from last year to 2011. So in other words, a £450,000 property we can see going down to £300,000. I don't see there being, if I can use the metaphor, a V-shaped recovery. I expect a pretty flat U for the few years after 2011. So there's not going to be any quick recovery. There certainly wasn't in the 1990s, and the situation is even worse now, so I certainly don't expect one this time.
So, Gordon, it sounds like it's a pretty bad time to start plunging into the property market.
Well, it depends on why you're buying. People, don't they buy houses to live in these days? I mean, you want a home, don't you? If you're a first-time buyer, presume you're getting married, you need somewhere to live, you have a choice. You stay at home with your parents, you rent, or you buy. Well, rents are going up. OK, prices may fall, but people don't move very, very quickly. The average time in a house is 5 years. If you buy now, 5 years' time, from what Jonathan's saying, your price will have recovered.
Just one final point, Gordon, which is that the discussion we're having now about the possibility of a stamp duty holiday is going to cause more paralysis in the market, is it not? If the government doesn't act quickly, then everybody will hang on to see whether there's going to be a stamp duty holiday.
Absolutely correct.
So presumably we can all agree that one way or another we need to know whether this is going to happen.
Yes, I think you should either say it's not going to happen or it is going to happen, and preferably sooner rather than later.
And can you agree with that, Jonathan?
Yes, I mean, one of the reasons why we had the bubble in the late 1980s was because Nigel Lawson gave the Myra's tax relief an extra 6 months, which he shouldn't have done. So yes, decisions should be made and implemented as quickly as possible. I take issue with the idea that in 5 years house prices will be higher than they are today. Gordon should go through the maths. I don't believe that they will. People do actually buy houses to secure their financial futures. Of course they buy them to live in their home, but they buy them to secure their financial futures. We may say they don't buy them as investments, but in reality, people have them at the back of their mind. Oh, great, I'm on the ladder now, I'll secure my future, which actually is a bit unfortunate because millions of people who are on that ladder are now in serious financial shtuck.
Okay. Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. Jonathan Davis, Chartered Financial Planner from Armstrong Davis Limited, spokesman for housepricecrash.co.uk. And thanks to Gordon Brown of Gordon Brown Associates, not the other Gordon Brown. Let's get your views. Vine at bbc.co.uk is the email address, or 0500 288 291 if you'd like to get through to us on the phone. Vine at bbc.co.uk on the email. Here's Adele.